Hey everyone. I just wanted to do a quick update. Um, I got here the stats for by Zemin. Um, I just drew them out as best as I could. Uh, my handwriting's not, amazing, but I figured this would help give more of a visual representation of what he has. As for like the Zhuan Wan sword, it spelled Xuan, and the proper pronunciation is Xuan. I'm not very great at that, so at least you can have a way to see it. Um, yeah. Anyway, let's get into chapter 10, Calling Home, Blood Warlock, Succubus Partner, the Apocalypse. The basketball court was quite large, and the stands had enough seats to fit a few thousand people without any problem. Currently, sitting in different seats, students and teachers looked in the direction of the cafeteria with fearful eyes. Big Sister She, do you think something bad happened? A small built female suddenly asked in a low voice as she hugged her knees and cuddled tightly in an effort to give herself warmth. You, Lan, don't worry. We also saw how strong Big Sister Bing Su is. Even if zombies appear, they won't be a problem against her, Wu Shi said in a firm tone, trying to sound as confident as possible, not only to convince her friend, but also to convince herself. Di Shulan bit her lips tightly as her body trembled constantly. In the end, she could not hold back her tears and began to sob. Big Sister Shi, I'm so scared. Song King turned into a zombie suddenly, and Zhang Na was bitten to death. Many people died, and I won't be able to talk with them anymore. Wu Shi, who was barely containing her own emotions, finally couldn't help but start to cry. She had just tried to communicate with her family. Unfortunately, she got no response. She already feared the worst. I'm cold. I want to wear dry clothes. I want to feel warm. I want to hear my mother's sermons again. Wu Shi whispered in tears. This kind of conversation could be heard everywhere inside the gymnasium. The students were terrified, waiting for a dark and unknown future. A few hours ago, they were all laughing and chatting happily, worrying about what kind of clothes they should buy to look their best. However, now all they wished for was dry clothes to relieve the bone chilling cold. Even the teachers, who were responsible adults, were in no position to relieve others when they themselves did not know if the next moment a strange creature would walk through the doors and claim their lives. What happened here? Zhang Bingsu's old voice was the first sound to break the silence of the place. Bai Zemin did not answer immediately. Instead, he gathered several tablecloths on the floor and tied it end to end, thus forming a huge square of cloth. Then he began to carefully move the body of the immobile zombies on top of the cloth square while slowly explaining. There's enough food in this cafeteria to sustain about 100 people for approximately a week. Besides, I don't feel comfortable in crowds either, so I'm planning to make this place my temporary resting area. So I'll take care of these zombies. You took care of these zombies, you say? Guan Bingsu muttered in a strange voice as she watched Bai Zemin work. Except for the initial glance, he had not looked back at them again and simply continued to work tirelessly. Many thoughts were constantly flashing in Shangguang Bingsu's mind, making it extremely difficult to comprehend her. Then he was not thinking as many things as she was. He simply looked at Bai Zemin's back and asked, May I ask how? Right, we still don't know your name. You are? Bai Zemin, he casually replied. Bai Zemin wasn't trying to act cool. This was his real personality. Even before the world became chaotic, he was not good at dealing with many people due to certain past incidents. See, Bai Zemin, it's a pleasure to meet you, Shen He said politely with a smile. Shen He was extremely handsome. His archery skill allowed him to become the best in his club, His grades were in the top 10 every semester. All these excellent qualities together, with his unknown but powerful family, made him the Prince Charming of countless beautiful girls. Even among the boys, he was popular because of his kindness. Same here, Baizeman replied without much interest. His top priority now was to fully ensure his safety, then call home, check on his family's safety, and finally, understand the rules of the new world better. Therefore, he was not interested in making friends with anyone, just as he had not been in the past. Chen He's expression became a little uncomfortable at Bai Zeman's clear coldness, and a bitter smile appeared on his handsome face. How did you deal with them? Zhang Bingsu asked. You could see bloodstains on the ground. However, that blood was obviously from the 4 large mosquitoes that were dead and torn to pieces on the ground. Then, Shangguang Bingsu was curious to know how it was possible that the young man in front of her killed the zombies without injuring them. They're not dead. They're still alive, Baizeman replied, finally finishing dragging the 15 bodies. What? Shangguang Bingsu's cold and indifferent expression broke for a moment when she heard his words. Baizeman began to drag the large square of cloth towards the exit with a bit of difficulty, but with steady steps. Although his strength was 55 points in total, he had not yet reached a level where he could drag 15 adult people casually. As he walked, he replied, These zombies are still alive. It's just that I destroyed all the connecting bones of the body, so even if the brain is intact, they're no different from dead zombies since they can't do anything. I didn't want to stain the ground where I will sleep with blood. Dongguan Bingsu's eyes lit up, and she finally understood the reason why the zombies' bodies were in such horrible condition. Previously, she had assumed that Bai Zeman was simply a barbaric and violent person, but after listening to his explanation, she understood that she had been wrong. Although she somewhat admired his strength, that was all. From her point of view, there was no trustworthy person in this place. Shangguan Bingsu, the only person she could trust a bit, was her childhood friend Chen He. As for the rest, they were all useless, especially the men. Currently, Shangguang Bingsu was surrounded by both men and women. Lian Xuan, the first president of the Student Association, and Chen He, the skilled archer, were constantly trying to engage in conversation. Liang Peng, the strong man with a terrifying hammer, looked at the bodies of some female students and teachers casually without caring too much about the world outside. After carrying the bodies of 15 zombies out of the place and dragging them to a nearby building, Bai Zeman returned to the gymnasium. He simply ignored the stares he was receiving and walked away quietly, with no intention of chatting with anyone. Upon arriving at the cafeteria, Bai Zeman used his blood manipulation skill to remove the blood that stained the floor, sending it through the broken window to the outside. Because the glass was broken, rainwater was constantly pouring in, and the areas near the windows were soaked. In addition, the cold really was unbearable. After a few minutes of consideration, Bai Zeman ripped the legs of several tables off and used the tops to cover the windows one by one. To prevent the wood from falling off, he used several cabinets and refrigerators inside the room, thus sealing out rain, wind, and decreasing the chances of an insect getting in. Then, Bai Zeman closed the door and locked himself inside the cafeteria. He turned on a dim light and sat on a chair away from the window and door to rest. 5 minutes later, he took his cell phone out of his backpack and, trembling hands, he called his mother. The number you have wished to reach is out of service or out of battery. Please try again later. Bai Zeman took a deep breath to calm himself. Not wanting to think about the worst case scenario, lingering fear, he dialed Meng Qi's number. The number you wish to reach is out of service or out of battery. Please try again later. Receiving the same message again, Bai Zeman couldn't help but put down the cell phone and leave it on the table. He slumped gently onto the chair, and as he listened to the steady sound of lightning, his eyes flooded slightly with tears. Although he did not want to think about it, it was clear to Bai Zeman that the probability that his family had died was very high indeed. After all, many people had turned into zombies without warning. Zombies had started attacking ruthlessly. Insects had evolved, and even domestic animals had turned wild. However, he really wasn't willing. The only real thing he had was his family, after all. Barely resisting the urge to cry, 5-7 picked up his cell phone again and dialed his father's number. Sitting on a nearby chair, Lilith felt a bit sad for him as she watched him act like a small child about to cry. Even when he was forced to fight for his life, even when he had no choice but to raise his sword and bathe in blood, even when his entire life was collapsing in front of him, Zeman was always decisive and did not hesitate. He fought when it was necessary to fight and used his brain to perfection to survive. However, in the face of his family's possible death, his calm had flown out the window.